with other people. But
Sure.
looks like we're live now. Thanks everybody for tuning in. All right. Do you want to introduce yourself just real quick, and we'll kind of go more
Yeah.
into the your Epstein work later.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Ellie, and I have the Panic Writer Substack. And I'm kind of, humdrumming around other social media, but I mostly hang out on Substack and I write, political pieces, personal pieces, and sort of the cross section of those too.
How much do you balance the personal pieces with the kind of political results of your, I guess, suspected doom scrolling? I'm a doom scroller all
Yeah,
day, so.
right. I think I was raised politically and to be like civically minded. But I'm also raising kids, and so I mean, even before the whole Substack situation, I was writing political pieces and sort of in the mindset of what's the world I want to raise my kids in. And so a lot of that centered around the 2024 election, and we were going to like the women's marches and doing different things like that. And now it's, now we're in the system that we're in once again. And so I do write personal pieces of things that have how this has affected our family or our community, probably more our community because we have like a very immigrant heavy community and we have issues that are at stake with the Trump administration happening where we live. We live a little bit close to like Delaney Hall and some of that stuff. But also with a lot of like the Epstein survivor stories, that's just that piece of it is, I mean, I think that was kind of like the universe sort of pulled me into that one. That wasn't really the
Hmm.
plan, but I think for me that a big piece of that is just raising kids in a world where you don't ever want something like that to happen again. And so how do we fix that? But then how do we prevent it in the future?
Yeah. Well, a testament to your work is this steady stream of hearts that you are getting. You're just getting constant
Thank
hearts,
you.
like the last
Thank you.
3 minutes straight. But first up, I wanted to touch base just with some of the more recent today's like Supreme Court decisions. Do you have any strong feelings on
Mhm.
that?
Yes.
E. Jean Carroll's case, Trump's appeal got denied, so I guess officially he's a rapist, right?
Right, right. And I mean,
Uh,
I had the pleasure of meeting Eugene last September. There's
oh,
like a little
nice.
kind of like secret book club that happens in New York City. And someone brought me to it, which then meant I was on the invite list for the other ones. But like they bring in really cool authors and you sit in somebody's living room and they don't tell you the address until like 24 hours before. But one of them was for her book. And so we got to go in and she read some excerpts and then she talked to us. And it was interesting at the time because she said like, yeah, I've not received a dime. Like I haven't seen any of that money.
Hmm.
And supposedly the case she won, she already won it, but he lost the appeal for that. That's for like 5.5 million. It's a smaller piece, but that's for the actual sexual assault and battery. Supposedly that money is already in escrow and she should have access to it, but then, you know, should she
Are
have had
you
access?
accusing Donald Trump of using litigation to avoid accountability for his actions?
I mean, I don't want to put words. Um, yeah. So he's got that. He's got the 84 million, something like that. That he also owes her for the defamation case. So she may or may not have received that money, but the point is he's guilty. He's guilty of these things, and now he's running a country with these, on his resume.
Yeah, right.
Um, but I mean, I think that was just one more big piece of that. That's like, and when that case happened, the biggest thing for me when that case happened was the judge's statement after the fact. He wrote a letter after the fact, and he was like, "I do find
Yeah.
that he raped E.G. Carroll. That is, that's not. This was a defamation case. This was not a criminal case." But he's like, "I do find that actually happened the way she described it," which I found really
Right.
profound.
Yeah, it's
So yeah,
it's unfortunate that it is a civil case, so he can't
yeah,
be like officially registered as a sex offender, which I think a lot of people would be pro
yeah.
pro
Well,
that.
and then you had the letter from what the 20 was it 20 something other women. I can't remember if it was 21 or 28, but there are actually on the record there are 41 women who have accused him on some level of sexual assault or harassment over the years. And by harassment I don't just mean like, hey baby, it's like, he has
Yeah,
he has MOs for pushing women up against the wall and kissing them without being asked and like doing all the things he described in the Access Hollywood book.
yeah, and bragging about it in many
Yes.
situations on live television
Yes,
that
yes,
everyone
yes.
has
So
seen.
I mean, there's a very long list. I've written about it. Other people have written about it. But it was good to see the letter come out with all the women's names on it yesterday saying we stand behind Eugene. I think that was really great. So yeah, that was it. I mean, it was something we already know, but it's just reinforcing
Right.
that yes, this is the thing that he did. And it's very hard to look
Yeah.
away from it.
Do you have any idea what's taking so long for someone to just start reading all the names of the perpetrators on the House floor using the kind of free speech loophole that they have? Like they keep talking about doing it and threatening to do it. Like, what is the holdup? Why
With
doesn't someone
the
just do it today?
so like specifically to the Epstein files, you mean?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have asked like the victims to do that, and I don't think they need to do that because I think we keep asking them to like litigate their own case, which, it's 30 years later, they shouldn't be doing that anymore. But, when you think of people in Congress, there are people who are threatening to come back once, like Thomas Massey, like once he's no longer in office, coming back. So you do wonder, like, what is the holdup in office? What is, and a lot of it has to do with the power of their legal teams.
Hmm.
For the women, for the survivors, the reason that they shouldn't have to come forward and say these names is there is no pro bono lawyer that they're going to have that can go up against Leon Black's lawyer and win, right? They're
Hmm.
just, financially, powerfully, that's just not going to happen. And they can try their best. They will do their best. The lawyers are amazing people and they're doing a good job. But when you go up against a $1 billion lawyer, it's a very tough legal team to fight
Right.
against. So,
I,
it- you know, a lot of these people could be crushed financially and reputationally and everything else by coming forward and naming the names. But I think that will happen. It will begin to happen. I think we will have better access. There's a lot of information in the files now.
yeah.
Um, and so I think a lot of people, when they find it, they're just announcing it
Right.
later on.
Well, do you think like this is something that like with my satire, I'm always thinking about things that I feel people should be doing, whether even if it's just as simple as trolling. But like, is there not enough money amongst rich like Hollywood people, billionaires that are liberal to just flood money for the legal fees? Is it just
So,
everybody's afraid of the political abuse and the retribution, and Trump obviously abusing all of his
yeah,
executive powers?
I think it's not even that it's just so not liberal versus conservative at this point. It's money versus not money. And there
Right.
are so many people in the files. Like example that I have given a lot lately is there's a guest list for a Yom Kippur dinner in 2010 that was at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And it's a very long list of people that are on all sides of the
Right.
spectrum politically and Hollywood and everything. Um, People are not speaking up who have big platforms because the degrees of separation are very, very slim depending
Right.
on who you are. If you're anybody who made above a certain amount of money, you're very close. Most of Congress, it was a circle of people. If you're in New York City, if you're in DC, it's it's a lot of people, but it's a relatively small circle and everybody's very close
Yeah.
to it. And so I think most people are not speaking up because if they're not in the files in some way, shape, or form, not saying they're abusing children, but a lot of people were connected with him or had
Right. And
financial
took his
connections.
money. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and so they don't want to speak up because they don't want that to be made public. But even if they aren't, someone they know is, and so it's just like this a bunch of nepotism, and it's why I say like if we look at Congress, if we could just like clear everybody out, get a brand new Congress, of people, because this is a very generational investigation too. Like it's above a certain age. If you're
Right.
younger than a certain age, you're not in the files. Like it's just that's just how it works. And so it's like if we had a younger Congress, we would have nobody connected to this court case.
Right.
And then we could probably investigate it properly.
Yeah. Do you think, well, like how nefarious would you say, because you've been doing a lot of stuff with the Epstein Files, you're
Hmm.
actually reading Virginia Giuffre's,
Hmm.
I guess the transcripts of the things that she's been involved in.
Yeah.
How's that going for you? Are you getting a good reaction? Are you learning anything new, kind of like literally
Hmm.
doing like the theatrical element of it?
I try not to be too theatrical, but I also want it to be Um, I want it to be read in a way that people kind of like hear her voice and not just me like reading words on a page,
Right.
like, because we were roughly the same age and grew up at roughly the same time. The reason I do that is I was at the Trump Epstein reading room, and I participated in their filibuster where for 24 hours people read from the files out loud, and then they had people there watching, but then they had people kind of across the country on different platforms watching. And it just struck me, and I was talking to the man who heads that up, and I just, he said if we did this properly, we would be doing this for a couple years. We would just be reading straight for a
Yeah.
couple years. And I can't do that all by myself, but I just thought, why not continue to read the files out loud? And then whoever wants to listen can listen, because people, I'll post things that are in the files. I'll post little clips or whatever, in my notes on Substack, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, is that from the files? Like, that's shocking." And it's like, yeah, this is in the files. Like, all this stuff is in the files. And so if you just make something public, like Virginia Giuffre's deposition from Ghislaine Maxwell's court case, or not court case, excuse me, her civil suit with Virginia Giuffre for defamation. If you just read those depositions out loud, you hear a person's voice, and you realize like the timidity of Virginia Giuffre's voice. Like, she was not there, about to go write a book or like to get on I don't know, a Netflix special. Like, she was
Right.
very timid, right? She was not excited about giving her testimony. And then you have other people, there's a lot of testimony in the files. Like, there was a deposition with Jean-Luc Brunel's bookkeeper. And Jean-Luc Brunel was Epstein's business partner. He's from France. He was incredibly involved with child trafficking, and he also ended up dead
Yeah.
in a
He
jail
ran a
cell.
modeling agency, right? And was
Yes, that
obviously moving people
Epstein
around that
invested
way.
in. Right, right.
Yeah.
And in that deposition with his bookkeeper, she's got no skin in the game. She has no problem saying what she knows. She's not going to get in trouble for it. So she names people,
Hmm.
places, all the people, perpetrators, everything. And she's like, I don't know this person. I just know they were there. They were in the room. They saw this. They participated in that. And there's a lot of that in the files where it's just lists of perpetrators. And again, when this idea with like Katie Fang's lawsuit that just came out, and where there are violations, it is almost every page of the files. There's some kind of a violation where they either named a survivor and didn't redact her, or gave details around her name to indicate who she is, or they redact somebody who's a perpetrator for reputational reasons, which is clearly
Hmm.
called out in the Transparency Act, or just the idea of, if you find an email thread from anybody in the files that it starts exactly in 2009, and nothing was discussed prior to 2009, and it's like, well, we wouldn't just have a giant gap in conversations, even if let's say somebody like Epstein or Donald Trump weren't big emailers, right? Like, let's say that Epstein started emailing in 2009. Other people were emailing. Other people were scheduling.
Right.
There were flight logs. There were things, but there's just like a 10-year missing gap in the file. So just things like that, where you can say, I have my head in this sort of vacuum all day of information, but I can't assume that everybody else does. How can I get on twice a week for an hour and just make some of this stuff public in a way that it's accessible? I don't know how many people are watching, because I can never see my Substack at the same time as I'm recording. So I don't know. I don't know how popular they are. But I'm just going to continue to do it. So if it's like 10 people, 100 people, whatever, just so that people have access to the information, and
Yeah.
also that not everybody can sit down and read deposition documents, right? Like
Right.
that's not something that everybody can do. And so if I can read them in a way that's maybe a little bit easier to understand, then that's what I'll
Yeah.
do.
Well, you are doing some great work for that because,
Yeah.
yeah, most people don't have the time to read all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And speaking of Katie Fang's lawsuit, like that, I guess, just got over one of the hurdles, right? That the
Mhm.
judges basically say, like, it's obvious. I think Todd Blanche admitted that he wasn't following essentially all the rules. Like, why are Democrats or other like lawyers, like, why is it up to Katie Fang to do this? Why are no Democrats
Right.
in Congress doing this? Like, is this something, do you think that Democrats in the Senate should be like filibustering stuff
Yes.
until they, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I guess any question
I
would be
think
preaching to the choir a little bit.
I think there's a lot here that they should be doing, and I think that people think way too much about their future political careers. They
Yeah,
they talk a big game, but when it comes down to actually doing something about it,
right.
you see people stand out. You see people who will go get pepper sprayed at Delaney Hall. Like, you'll see some people doing things for their constituents, but this is a big one that a lot of people are doing a little bit, but not very many people are doing a lot. And sometimes I get frustrated because we'll hand things off to Congress that we find, or I'll mention something in a document and they'll be like, "Oh, who's that guy? I've never heard of him before." And I just want to say,
Yeah.
how am I
I
in my
know. Yeah.
blog,
It's like
aware of
malpractice.
this, but you're in Congress and you've
Right.
never heard of this. And I get that they have a very heavy workload, but I think there is sort of a middle ground where people could be much more active if people thought less about like what their election's going to look like and more about
Yeah.
this. They'd probably be a lot more electable if they were really vocal and
Yeah.
making a
That's the
difference. Well,
thing
that's
that
what they
like
feel.
strikes me is like I feel like it's kind of an easy win to be a hero if like you like
Mhm.
somebody that went to the parties and didn't do
Right.
any of the icky stuff, but it's like, hey, here's everybody I saw, here's the offhand comments I
Mhm.
heard. Like it seems like low hanging fruit to make yourself a hero.
Yeah.
And like,
Mhm.
especially from my understanding, it seems like a lot of the acquaintances of Epstein, like obviously were not all of them were involved. A lot of them didn't
Mhm.
know. There's like dinners and like some of the articles I've read with the people working around Epstein, like they kind of like tricked people to get like other famous people to go to his dinners or events,
Mhm.
or tricked people into not being totally clear about who he was to get him invited to events.
Right.
And like some of the articles actually make him kind of look like a little bit of a loser, as in he's like
Yeah.
trying to
Really
rehabilitate
neurotic.
himself. And
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of that, and you do wonder like what was the sauce there that he was getting these people to kind of do all his fixing. Because you're right that there are a lot of people who are coming out as very nefarious. And I mean, I've written about Michael Wolff, but there's like Michael Cohen, there's other people who were aware of information at the time where you just think, man, if they came out and did this the right way, they could be superheroes, right? I have
Yeah.
all the
Michael Wolff, especially. Like he's
yeah,
got
like I have
those hours of transcripts that he says no
yeah,
one's
like
interested in.
yeah,
It's
and
like, no, I
I
think
just
everyone's interested.
like, if you wanna be the hero and have book deals for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
like, get it right and help and, stop making money off it and start helping. And there's so many people in the files and, like and there's this, like, I was reading through Bill Gates's transcript and this and then also, Howard Lutnick, and this blatant, like, disregard A or just I didn't know that he was a sex
Yeah.
offender. You know what I mean? And it's just like if you can tell with Bill Gates especially, you can tell that Melinda figured out right away what his
Yeah.
criminal convictions were, why he went to prison, why he, what is that she figured out. Bill Gates was like, I don't know. And it's like, in what world would you have $1 billion foundation go work with a guy that you heard had a criminal background
Yeah.
in possible sexual something, and then be like, "But it's just not our policy to look that up." Like, this is a billion-dollar foundation that, like, gets
Right.
clean water for children. You'd look it up in every
Yeah.
scenario. You'd go look into this guy's background. So, just, like, there's this constant even people who are, like, reporters or whatever at the time who are hanging out with him, and there's just, like, this constant drum of, like, "We didn't know his background. We didn't know his
Yeah.
criminal history." And when I was writing about Howard Lutnick, I thought, he states that he's disgusted by this guy. We went to his house and he was talking about sexual things, and we were like, we will never be around that guy again. And then,
Yeah. Spoiler though,
five
he's
years
his
later,
next
he's
door
bring
neighbor.
right 5 years later, he's bringing his kids to his island, and it's
Yeah.
like, in what world would that ever happen? And so I thought, you know what? They're all in New York. I'm just gonna look. I'm gonna do a Google search. This is the thing. We have Google. I'm gonna do a
Right.
Google search of how many headlines from just New York City newspapers talked about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal and sexual history in this period of time. And it was over 100. It would be so hard to not know if you were in his circle what his crimes were, and know that he, based on his reputation, likely did those crimes. Like, it's just
Yeah.
impossible to know. And so you see a lot of people just saying, "Oh, I went to his house for dinner. I didn't know it." And it's like that was news. That was in New York Magazine.
Right.
That was in New York Times. That was everywhere. People knew about him. He had a reputation. And it's more men than women, I think, in that scenario that kind of turn a blind eye. But it wasn't. I mean, there were women in there in those rooms with him who just didn't seem to have a problem.
Yeah.
But
And some weird
Melinda
ones where
Gates was
they're
not
like,
one of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some emails where they're even talking about like, "Oh, I'm bringing my daughter and her friends." Like, that's
Mhm.
pretty creepy, you know?
Absolutely, because even like let's say hypothetically you didn't know he had that criminal background, which is ridiculous. He's very big in New York City, disappeared for 13 months. Um, you'd know reputationally because he always had that's the thing, like he was kind of weird. Like he didn't like to be alone, whether it was in his own house, which he was a hermit. He didn't like to leave. Everybody had to come to him. Or even just like in his email threads, when people didn't answer his emails right away, he'd be like, "What's going on? Are you gonna answer?"
Yeah,
He gets very neurotic about being alone, right? And so he wasn't alone in his own home. He was always surrounded by people, and you have people like Michael Wolff who have documented statements where they say, "I noticed he had girls around him all the time. He had teenage girls around him." I did an interview with a guy who went to Harvard during the time that Epstein was like building departments and
right.
making friends. And he was a student there, and he said, I noticed that he had girls around him all the time who seemed very young. And he's like, I was just a student there, you know. He didn't hide that fact. And so for people to be like, well, I just brought my kids around him when he has these girls around him that feel very, I mean, even if you think of like Playboy bunnies, like some of these like ridiculous people who had to have like Playboy bunnies around them all the time. Like you wouldn't bring your kids around. Like that
Yeah,
it's a
right.
very sexual in nature environment. So even if you thought that they were over 18, which I'm sure nobody was checking, it was still a very sexual environment. Every home had photographs of naked women and his assistants who were like, you know, helping at the
Yeah.
table. And there's a big 8 foot naked picture of her right there. It would be very, very hard to miss.
In terms of the investigation, like how would you rate James Comer? He's the one kind of in charge of the committee over this. Is he like good faith acting at all? Are they just running out the clock, pretending to be
Yeah.
incompetent and
I
taking their
think
time? Like, is there anything redeeming in the stuff that Comer is personally doing?
I think he's just a better actor than Todd Blanche. I think he's giving space for people to ask questions, but I don't think he's enforcing any rules that would put the iron to the fire.
Right.
And so you have all these depositions that are not under oath. You know, they're not on camera. We cannot see their body language. Like all the things that you would normally require, we can't have with these guys.
Mm,
They're just voluntary interviews,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And thankfully, you know, the House oversight is pretty good. They tend to be more leaning towards justice with this case. And so they subpoenaed Leon Black mid conversation because he was so resistant to their questions. But James Comer is, I think he would be just as happy to see this investigation sort of subside than be solved.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Todd Blanche is actively trying to get rid of the investigation and not, you know, make information public at the behest of
Right.
no, Donald Trump, who is his boss. So I think that's the only difference. I think their intent is the same. It's just again, Comer's better at looking like he's doing the job, but
Right.
he would be happy to have this go away.
Now, what did you make of Pam Bondi's recent claims where she was saying that basically Todd Blanche actually was in charge of everything while she was Attorney General? And it seemed to me like kind of pushing blame and,
Yeah.
kicking the can away from herself. But like, do you think there's any hope that the New York State will like disbar him or debar him, take away his law license? I think there's a bunch of that like big letters signed by 100 lawyers. Is that going anywhere in this
I think
Department of
all
Justice
this, I
or?
mean, any kind of justice that we will ever look for will have to happen once Trump's out of office, whether that's impeachment or at the end of his term. I do think that Todd Blanche has been in charge of this the entire time.
Yeah. Trump's
I'm
personal lawyer, by the way.
yeah, his defense attorney from the Stormy Daniels case. There's no conflict of interest there. So I do feel like he put her in charge to sort of soften the blow from the American people to have
Yeah.
like a woman attorney general. She either acted like she knew nothing or she didn't know anything that was going on because it was so
Which is quite a
messy.
possibility, I feel like. I think she was maybe just intentionally hands off and
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
don't know, I can't,
Mhm.
perjure myself about or something like that.
Right, and that was the whole thing with her deposition was, you know, they would ask her a question and she'd give an answer for something that like the stock market,
Yeah.
whatever, like gas prices had nothing to do with
Yeah.
the question that was asked, and that was
Right.
because she didn't want to lie and she didn't want to tell the truth, so she had just give a nonsense answer. Um, Todd Blanche has been in charge of this, you know, obviously at least since last summer when he was in that Situation Room and proffering Ghislaine Maxwell. And I'm positive he's known what's been going on the entire time, because the only reason we have files that we do, which is not everything. And I will say this, side note, you know, I was I was just the other day going like, we keep hearing that we have 3.5 million files. How do we know we have 3.5 million files? Like,
Right.
is there a count? Is there a way to count them? And so I was searching through and it said there's no way to know that we have 3.5 million files. We were just told by the DOJ that that's what we have. And I was like, that is so sketchy. We could have a million,
Yeah.
we could have 500,000. As long as we have a number that's so big that it's basically unsearchable for one human being, we will not know how many files we have. But everything that we've gotten so far has been because of like citizen reaction, public reaction, screaming for something that we have a right to see, that should have been given, 90 days past the Transparency Act last December. This is how the justice system is supposed to work, and everything has been very resistant until people figure out about it and start yelling, basically.
Yeah.
So, like
Right.
when NPR figured out last, I want to say February, they figured out that there was 60 or 53, I think 53 missing pages of FBI interviews with a young Jane Doe out of South Carolina. The American public went nuts, and we said, give us those pages. And they eventually gave us 16 of them. We're still missing 37 pages. But we got part of what we needed. We needed to know certain things exist. And so it's been a little bit of pulling teeth. But I think that's what it's going to take. Now, I don't know how many files we have, how many more files we'll get. But we don't have nothing. Like every day we
Yeah.
find
Right.
something. Yeah.
Do you think that things are actively getting destroyed when Democrats take over and maybe hopefully, subpoena everything right away? Like, do you think they're just destroying a bunch of stuff?
I think that
Probably.
would be very hard to do just since everything's digitized. I question if Elon Musk didn't take a copy when he left,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Right.
Doge had access to every piece of
Yeah.
information.
I read a
So
lot
my
of
guess.
satire about that angle that it's just like so
Mhm.
many people are involved that like from a national security standpoint, like how many people like Trump filled out the administration with people involved. So it's a little bit of a circular firing squad potential thing where it's, everyone has to lie and go with the lies because they're all implicated. So it's kind of mutually
Right.
assured destruction. But I don't know, like with Democrats taking over and subpoenaing everything, and I'm sure, they'll do everything they can to slow everything down and refuse. They'll probably do all kinds of insane client attorney privilege claims and executive
Mhm.
privilege claims. Like, I guess going forward, it's obviously going to be a mess to try to like get this from their claws, right? But
Right.
like, should Democrats make this a bigger issue in the election? Do you perceive
Absolutely.
it becoming like kind of a giant controversy again when the election and all the ads are coming out and candidates are really giving a reason why like Republicans do not deserve any power in
Yeah.
Congress?
I think if they were smart, they would do that. I mean, this
Yeah,
has clearly been the number one issue in this government is
right.
those files, and it's bipartisan. And as far as like, will we have access to them? They've been really, it's a little bit of a clown show. Nobody's qualified for any of their positions that they're in. And we know that other governments have access to the files.
Yeah,
We know that, when you have all these FBI agents in there who have access to the files, the idea that there couldn't potentially be a leak of something is pretty slim. Like the
right.
files exist somewhere. But also, what I remind people of is, we got not a really big, we got like a 30,000 file drop or something like that in November of last year that was really significant. It was photos, it was emails, it was a lot of stuff we didn't have. That all came from the Epstein estate, which is not run by the DOJ. The Epstein estate has probably more damning information because it is completely private. It is not, FBI agent redacted emails, that type of thing. It is all private information that comes from Jeffrey Epstein's home and his estate. His lawyer and his accountant, Richard or Indiyah Khan, they are in charge of that estate. And also, so you have those two who could pull the trigger and just say, here it is. I also believe, and this is just me, I don't, this is not a guarantee, but I also believe that Ghislaine Maxwell is probably in charge of the estate and has control over the estate. She certainly has control over Epstein's money, which is all still available, but probably offshore in something called the Southern Trust, because after he died, payments were still being made to this offshore
Yeah,
account.
right.
So likely that money still exists, and she still has kind of a yes no power with the estate, and that holds a lot of information. Like that's where we got the
Yeah, right.
birthday book. That's where we got the Bannon emails. Like that
Yeah.
is all from the state. So there are things that we have access to that are not under the thumb of the DOJ. All those computers that were hidden and pulled out of his house in Palm
Yeah,
Beach,
right.
those exist. They probably were not destroyed. They are probably in a warehouse somewhere, just for like a kill switch situation. I don't know, but there's a lot more for us to see. And even if we go based on what we're being told from the DOJ, Pam Bondi says we still have 2.5 million more files to go, and they can't
Yeah.
say that they're duplicates and say that they're under seal, because why would a duplicate be under seal if it's not under seal over here?
Yeah,
That's
right.
stupid. That doesn't make any sense. So they're not duplicates. They're the missing chunks of files that we know don't exist right now. And often we will see pieces of those that we're not supposed to have in the files that are forgotten, and they're sort of like the little Easter eggs,
Right.
and they almost always have to do with Donald Trump, like almost every
Yeah.
single time. Yeah.
Well, that's a kind of an issue that I've been thinking about. That Donald Trump doesn't send emails. He allegedly wasn't on the Lolita Express plane, but like I'm sure his plane was going all over the
Right.
place to Epstein
Yes.
properties constantly. And so, like, I have this idea that I don't know how nefarious to believe, how
Mhm.
conspiratorial to be. Like, was he really this like hyper, like cutting edge blackmail operation from Israel? I have this idea that Donald Trump was definitely more involved, and Donald Trump
Mhm.
always had political aspirations. Donald Trump's always had international relations. He's been accused constantly and actually been prosecuted for Trump Tower being filled with like Chinese nationals, Russian
Mhm.
oligarchs, and mafia people. So he's
Yep.
obviously been money, he's a overpriced luxury real estate mogul, which means almost certainly a lot of
Yeah.
that is just straight up money laundering, right?
The mob.
Overpriced
Yeah.
luxury goods.
From New
It's
York.
not. Yeah, like in his first term, what was it, like Turkish officials were buying
Mhm.
all kinds of
Mhm.
stays at his hotels and
Yeah.
things like that. So like Donald Trump with the political aspirations, the international relations,
Mhm.
like I've always thought that like Donald Trump is probably more of a ringleader, right? Like who got all the blackmail? Like maybe the guy that wanted to run for president and take over the Republican Party and kind of hijack it from within.
I mean I mean, yes to the flights. Like, how many billionaires do you know that are carpooling? Like, he would have flown his own plane, but
Right.
nobody's looking into Donald Trump's flight
Yeah.
logs.
Sorry to the climate that they're all flying solo to
Yeah,
the
I
Pedal
mean, yeah,
Islands,
he wouldn't be like, "Hey, can I have a ride?" Like, maybe once
Yeah.
in a while, but
Yeah.
no, he's just flying his own
Donald
plane.
Trump was he was worried about the climate carbon emissions,
Yeah,
right?
sure. I'm sure he was. Yeah, so you have all that, and then you have, like, and this is kind of an excuse that a lot of these, like, billionaire guys use. Howard Lutnick uses, like, "Oh, I never saw that email. I never saw it," because it's
Yeah.
assistants of people talking to assistants of
Right,
people.
exactly.
But the information is there. Their schedule is there. Everything they were doing is there. But also, Epstein had no problem talking about Donald Trump and the things that he did. He had no
Yeah.
problem talking about, like, when they had that real estate deal in Palm Beach that kind of went south, and their friendship
Because
broke
Trump
up over it
screwed him over, right? And
because Trump went
like
behind his back
outbid
and,
him
like,
at the last minute.
bought it with money he didn't have and then flipped it
Yeah.
to an oligarch. That is a whole entire
Yeah.
story. But, like, in that, when Epstein was pissed off about that, he was talking about how Trump was working with, like, the electrical union down there that was, like, mob run, and he had no
Right.
problem talking about any of that. And that's also why I've been really adamant about Michael Wolff's, like, interviews with him, because Epstein would run his mouth about the things that Donald Trump did. He had no problem
Right.
talking about him. He hated him. And so a lot of that information, even if Donald Trump is not emailing it himself, because yeah, he didn't email often, he always calls. Part of that is because he's paranoid. Part of that is because he's technology like stupid, and
Yeah.
he just
Where
doesn't
it works out.
understand it.
He's kind of got that mob boss,
Yeah,
reptilian lizard brain
yeah,
ability to keep himself out of prison. And
yeah.
that's like
He's
the one thing
so
he's actually
stupid that he's
talented at in
smart.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we would have a lot of information about him and his whereabouts and what he was attending and
Right.
photographs, and who knew who and who was where, that would you'd start to have credibility to the stories of somebody saying, no, he's been around for this long versus he disappeared in 2004 and they never spoke together again. That's probably not very likely. They were in the same circles. They were
Yeah.
in the same city.
And there were some
And
emails in 2017 about spending Thanksgiving at the White House, right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, I try to take things very much with a grain of salt and I think it's just because I've read these things so like way too long. Like I've read the emails too many
yeah,
hours to where I start to sort of get in the mindset of what's humor, what's sarcasm, what their tone would
right,
be, what's the psychology behind it. I think 'cause he said something about the Trump boys are in Palm Beach this weekend for Thanksgiving. I think more of that has to do with the fact that whenever Trump was flying back and forth, Epstein's pilot would have to tell him, Trump's flying in at this time, and that was because they couldn't fly out. I mean, that means the airspace is
right.
closed. And so I think it was more that they just knew when the Trumps were coming and going to Palm Beach. I don't think he was having Thanksgiving dinner with Donald Trump in 2017, but they certainly were in the same circles and the money flowed to the same people.
Right.
They were affecting the same politicians and making gains for themselves. So I'd say more by that time, they were probably, enemies and competitors. And so they were aware of
Yeah,
each other,
right.
certainly, right? They were aware of each other. They had Steve Bannon between them, kind
Yeah.
of hopping information back and forth. But
So if I get you
yeah,
right, you're saying that Eric Trump wasn't just a good hang, that everyone wanted to hang out with Eric Trump.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. And you mentioned Steve Bannon, which cracks me up that like Steve Bannon has paid absolutely no consequences for like being the
No,
PR guy for Epstein. Like even his fans just like, oh yeah, that's Steve Bannon, that's Steve.
I
Like
know
it's
that's
funny to me that he like Steve Bannon is like so odious that like other people involved, you start getting like the media attention, like henpecking them, but like just no
hmm
one was surprised or
yeah.
even cared that Steve Bannon is trying to be BFFs with him.
I just think that partially it's almost like whittles down to like the way he dresses and looks in public that people are like, don't take, we're not even gonna pay like
Yeah.
can't
No
take
one
him
should take him
seriously. He
serious. Yeah.
he kind of smells bad. He didn't shave. He's wearing
Yeah, right.
yesterday's
Yeah.
clothes.
Looks like
Um,
shit.
yes, but it's like a really weird relationship because Michael Wolff introduced Steve Bannon to Epstein's. He was like
Oh my
the
god, to be a fly
yeah.
on the wall of that
Yeah.
that
So, and
introduction.
they were trying, there's a lot of relationships that Michael Wolff was trying to get, Epstein wanted, he would have Michael Wolff go to work for him and get, and one of those was Bill Gates. One of them was Steve Bannon. Michael Wolff would write these write ups. He would write the letters that he would have Epstein send to these people to sound like he was a smart guy.
Yeah.
And Bannon was one of those. They finally met in October 2017. And then they had this sort of fast friendship, except for Bannon was much more paranoid than Steve Wolf or Michael Wolff, but they had a very parallel relationship, Michael Wolff and Steve Bannon. And I think there was a little bit of a
Like
fight
a
for
rivalry?
Epstein, layout for Epstein's affection and like,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it's interesting because in the beginning, Steve Bannon really looks up to Epstein because there's the rumors of him being involved in intelligence and Steve Bannon still sort of licking his wounds leaving the White House. He's always wanted to work for the CIA. That's been his dream forever. And so he was thinking like, this may be the guy who can get me there. I heard he works in
Yeah.
intelligence, whatever. And so he's really like hyper, involved in the relationship and kind of trying to get his attention. And then you see just over the next 2 years, because they talked every day to the point when Epstein was arrested. Like they were talking while
Yeah.
Epstein was getting arrested. You see a shift in their dynamic where Bannon starts to build like this global empire where he's flying all over the world and meeting with leaders. And Epstein starts to become more isolated. He knows he's under surveillance. He's feeling the walls closing in. And so he starts to live vicariously through the things that Steve Bannon is doing. And so he starts to vie for Bannon's affection and he lets his guard down. And, this guy who's usually very kind of curt in his emails and very stiff, depending on who he's talking about, he totally lets his guard down. And it's like, I always say it's like bro talk. Like he will say
Yeah.
things, he doesn't swear a lot, but when he talks to Bannon, he'll just start swearing and being like really loose. And so he wanted to do everything. And he was telling Bannon how to talk to certain leaders because he couldn't talk to them anymore because he had a reputation. And he was trying to get Bannon to make this documentary, which they were filming it. And we've seen a couple of hours of those in the files. But the intent was toward the end, they were supposed to go to the island and film on the island. They obviously never got to do that. But Bannon started to want to do this big film thing with Epstein. But what he didn't know is Michael Wolff was also trying to make a documentary with Epstein over here. So it was funny to see the two men kind of have this like triangular relationship with Epstein and not know what the other person was doing, and they were doing the
Yeah,
exact same thing. And Epstein didn't tell either of them, of course, because
right.
he was just like, "Great, I'll get a movie somewhere."
Yeah. That's what I enjoy about, like, the egomaniacs and the total morons that, like
Hmm.
I've been watching lately, like, a lot of crime docs where just you get these, like, morons that just film everything about themselves
Yeah,
thinking they're
the
genius, and then
profit.
you end up yeah, and you get, like you end up to the point where there's a documentary using your documentary that thinks
Hmm.
is you think is making you a
Yeah,
genius. It's gonna
yeah,
show everyone that you're so intelligent, and then
yeah.
instead, that footage that you filmed of yourself is, like, just, incriminating and or creating a documentary that just
This
makes
is
you look
great.
like a giant idiot where you go viral on Netflix for being like so outlandish, you know?
Yeah, so I've watched two lately, and one is The False Prophet, which if everybody you must watch it, but then there's nothing as good as that, and I apologize. But it's about this guy who's in a polygamist sect, and he's sort of a loser, but he somehow becomes a kingpin and has, it's just kind of the age old story. But he is so excited about being on camera, and he's just such a metaphor for all these men in the Epstein files. He's like, did you see how I jumped on the rocks there? Let me go back, and I'm gonna go jump across the rocks again. Can you
It's like,
close
"Mom,
in
are you
on?
watching? Mom, are you watching?
Yeah,
Mom, look at me."
right. So there's that one, and then there's another one. I think it's called In the Deep, and it's about this guy who goes down on a submarine and he commits a murder on a submarine. But then you go back, and the whole time they'd been filming him for like to talk about his submarine. It had nothing to do with this crime that was going to happen, and you start to see all the foreshadowing leading up to this murder at some point in the end. And you realize the whole time he's filming to go do a murder, and like all the things he says, and he knows he's going to be
Yeah,
famous for committing this murder. And it's just like the level of sociopathy first off, but then the narcissism is,
yeah,
I mean, it's now, I think, having read all these files, it's so easy to spot now, and it gives me such clarity for like how I will vote in the future,
yeah,
who I will look up to, and
right.
authors and actors and activists, because I can just see it now, and I'm just like, nope, oh, hold on, that sentence you just said, I see that you're a
Yeah,
narcissist.
right.
It's just made me pinpoint, who are you out for? Are you out for yourself? Or are you out for good?
Yeah.
And this entire story is a bunch of people who had like a t-shirt that said I'm out for good, and then they were just like, now I'm
Yeah,
gonna go screw you over, right? So it's
right.
like, and it's so wild because we have all these emails from them, that nobody ever thought was going to be read. I don't ever think anybody's going to read my emails. I hope I'm nice in them, but like you have all these emails from people where they let their guard down because they don't think anybody's ever going to read them, and you see their true nature, and you're just like,
Yeah,
man, all these people are assholes. Like,
right,
who knew Bill Gates was such a jerk, right? Like, and everybody
right.
treated his wife badly, and she was really smart and she protected her children, and he, didn't. And so it's just like and that's hard to turn off sometimes. So now
Yeah, right.
I'm like, don't look at that
You
person,
got the
turn it
eye
off.
yeah, you got the eye for the dark triad,
Yes,
traits of,
yes,
crazy
yeah.
people. Yeah, you brought up Michael Wolff, and you had this amazing quote. I want to read it. You were describing him that he segued from Manhattan media wise guy to Hampton's lifestyle influencer, complete with sockless flats and pioneer woman-esque backdrops in the just so farmhouse he shares with his wife. I just thought that was like a really good way
It
to kind of
just
like introduce him. But like,
just the
is Michael
sarcasm.
Wolff yeah. Is he a villain? Is he an idiot? Like he's playing all sides because he came out with that Fury book about Donald Trump, seemingly
Yeah.
like burning a big bridge with Donald Trump. He's doing this stuff with Epstein and then like he was being a PR guy for Epstein. Is he just
I
like
think
what's his deal? Is he a villain
he's
or a moron or both?
I don't think he's a moron. No, I think he knows
Okay.
exactly what he's doing. He very much fits this circle of people, but he was not considered qualified to be at the top. So he's like in there, but you think of like, I don't know,
So he's
like
never let in and he's always kind of looking in and
he's
wanting to
there.
be in
Yeah,
the
and there's a
room.
really great picture of Epstein in there somewhere, and I think it was there at some like concert or something. There's somebody playing a cello, but there's Epstein standing smiling for the camera, and then in the back, Michael Wolff is just like staring at him, like, I want to be up there with you.
Yeah.
Um, I just think that like, and I don't think he burned his bridge with the White House. I think he still has it because even bad press, Donald Trump loves,
All press is good press.
yes. And I also think that's part of why he won't give up those interviews with Epstein is because that bridge would definitely be burned if he gave up those
Yeah,
interviews
right.
because they're all about Donald Trump. Because you have to remember, Michael Wolff had, in order to write that book, he had 200 hours of 200 interviews with people in the White House. So he has more interviews than he
Yeah.
does with Epstein. He has a lot of interviews.
Right.
Um, I just think of him, he's just very typical. So I researched him for about 6 months based on some emails where I just went, hold on, this is not who I thought this man was. Because I read his books. I was really excited to see him come forward and start talking about Epstein. And then I started to read some of these emails and I was like, these are making me uncomfortable. Um, and I started to research him and I came to the realization that most of the places that he's worked won't work with him anymore. Whether that's because he was connected with people that were very uncomfortable to them
Right.
to be connected to, or just like a personality, like a narcissism thing. Like he's burned a lot of bridges himself. Not the Daily Beast because he's very close with Joanna Coles. They've been friends for years and years. So that's a pretty stalwart platform for him. But you know, he's just kind of the ultimate grifter. And I don't like to throw that word around, but when you drip information about the Epstein case and you call yourself like a warrior for survivors, which he hasn't used those exact words, but like, he called Epstein the devil. And it's just like,
Hmm.
man, we have 1,800 pages of emails. You did not think he
Yeah,
was the
right.
devil, right? Like he was paying you. He wanted you to write a book and a documentary.
Right.
Um, he was his ultimate fixer. He was hiring PR for him. He was telling him how to like cleanse the Wikipedia and the internet of all of his sexual crimes so that they look like
Yeah.
he was the Michael Cohen of Jeffrey Epstein, right? He
Right.
was the ultimate fixer. And in this course, he's just like watched to see how does the public receive this story, and I'm going to navigate how I tell it based on what they want. He didn't believe survivors. He thought the British press was gullible for believing Virginia Giuffre's story about Prince Andrew. He was helping Epstein how to navigate away from these people who were blackmailing him, right? These survivors. He didn't believe any of them. He thought it was just totally bunk. And so now he's writing these stories in drips and drabs behind a paywall to look
Right.
like he's like the savior of the Epstein files. And he wasn't. And I think the thing that really kicked it off for me was when when Melania Trump said, I'm going to sue you for saying, I had sex on
Yeah,
Epstein's
right,
plane or
right.
whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll sue you first. And there was no lawsuit. She's never filed a lawsuit, doesn't exist, but he filed something called an anti-SLAPP suit. And then he started a GoFundMe to like pay his legal
Right.
bills and it raised
And you mentioned
800.
that how he has money. He made like $13
Yeah.
million from his books. He's got the
And like, what
paywall.
does he need $830,000 from like people, middle class people paying for their Substacks, right? Like, what does
Right.
he need with that money? He lives in the Hamptons. He had, a bestseller that made for him in his pocket $13 million, along with other books and deals that he has. Like, he didn't need any of that. Why would you ask for it? Like that takes a type of
Right.
person to ask that question. Like sue her if you want to sue her. I mean, it got thrown out because the judge was like, that's not what you do. That's an abuse of the system. You can't just do
Yeah.
that. So then where is that money, right? Like where does it go? And that's just been the kicker for me because I've even tried to like play into it and be like, look, if you're a grifter, fine. Release those interviews, put them behind a paywall, right? But just make them publicly available so that we have access to them.
Right.
Because if that's what it takes for you, you have to make money off of them. Fine, but like don't hold on to these. These could help somebody down the
Right.
line. And so yeah, he's a little. I mean, everything's so cliche. I don't want to be like he's a snake, he's a grifter, but like he's just somebody who hasn't been out for good and he hasn't been out for others. It has to benefit him first if he's going to do something. And also it's just this like reputational currency. It's the same thing that Donald Trump had, the same thing that Epstein had. Your reputation matters above all else. And if it means
Right.
not helping somebody, if it means hurting somebody, then fine. But I always say that with the caveat, he didn't abuse children as far as I know. Like Michael Wolff is not, it's anywhere involved in these files in
Right.
abuse of children. It's just that he was aware of stuff going on. He helped clear the path so that it could continue on another 10 years. I mean, this could have ended in 2008. And he stepped in and just totally paved the way for Epstein to have another 10 years of this
Yeah.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Well, one thing I really appreciate your reporting is just how fair you are and how like
Mhm.
sensible you are. And like obviously just from this chat, you always point out the things that are maybe not fair to say or things that
Mhm.
are maybe taken like out of context. Like I know you mentioned like the sulfuric acid jugs or
Yeah.
whatever that Epstein had and how that like actually had like a cleaning purpose,
Yeah.
I guess, and it wasn't
Yeah. His house was
necessarily for
over the
dissolving
salt water.
bodies.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
my mother, I love her dearly, but she's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. So I was just very like, solidly into I was the kid somebody said this online the other day, like, "How many of us grew up reading the encyclopedia from the '90s?" And it was like, I totally read the encyclopedia in the '90s. So I was just somebody who really needed to make sure something existed before I said it, there was information, and now with the
Yeah,
internet, even more so. And so in this case, it's really easy to get lost on tangents of things that sound very exciting, like horribly exciting, but exciting to say that some of these really, really wild things happened when there's not a lot of evidence. There may be somebody mentioned it once in an email or,
right,
something like that. But like, I try to remind people that we have enough evidence in the actual, photographs, FBI files, interviews, everything. We have enough evidence to put a lot of people in jail. We don't
right,
need any more wild stories to convince people that what they did was a crime. And so, like, when you see memes, you see photographs, there's one that always goes around where it's like Epstein and Trump standing in a room full of children, and people share it all the time.
hmm
And I remind them, I'm like, look at their faces. That is Donald Trump from like
yeah,
2012, and that is
right,
Jeffrey Epstein from like 1985. Like, they wouldn't look like that at the same
yeah,
time.
right,
This is not a real picture. And I realize we want them to have a picture like this to prove how terrible they are, but we already have this stuff. Like, we
yeah.
already have the information. We don't need to go into really conspiratorial territory. And I get very black and white about a lot of it, where people, things will be said in the emails and people will be like really, really shocked about it. And I'm just like, I've read so many of their emails. I know that this is just their stupid humor. This isn't like, even Martin Novak, when he talks about, he's like, "Oh, did you torture the girl?" Like, he's trying to be cool to Epstein. He's trying to
hmm
sound cool because he's a nerdy professor. And which was a lot of the people he dealt with. They looked up to Epstein like a jock, and they wanted to be funny and
Yeah,
cool to him, so they would
right,
say things like that, and they probably didn't mean them, but they sound horrible, right? They sound terrible, and it's awful that that's the thing that was funny to them in Epstein's wheelhouse, but likely
right,
there was no girl being tortured in that moment. It was supposed to be off the cuff. But again, I don't know. I don't know. This is just kind of me reading 1,000 emails and learning these
right.
people's personalities.
Yeah, I love my favorite one of those examples is Elon Musk, kind of trying to get himself invited to the party, and apparently being so lame that Epstein ghosted him, and
Yes,
but
I
like
mean, I just can't imagine that relationship would have worked out.
yeah, right. But it's funny that, it's like all of these people that are so rich and famous and big and so much alleged power, but they're like lonely losers that want
Yes,
to be included. They look up to
100%.
idiots just because they're like, I guess, completely overwhelmed or, like
Mhm.
jealous of the fame and the glitz and the access to parties and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like
you look
Elon
at
Musk might be the most lonely person in the world despite being the richest person in the
yes.
world.
Yeah, I mean, he basically pays people to be mothers to his children. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, right.
he's not out there with like a rampant sex life. Yeah, I think, if you look at like statistics of personalities, um, sociopaths tend to go to Hollywood, politics, and finance. So this is the world that they lived in.
Right.
Were a lot of people that could not relate to anybody else, couldn't empathize with anybody else. But then you also have, especially with Hollywood, a lot of people are introverts, right? A lot of actors are introverts in their
Right.
real life. And so you would have these people who have this like fame on paper and it looks really good. And I'd love to see that guy standing next to me in a picture. But all of them were so awkward. All the professors at Harvard were so awkward. And yet, he was getting underage girls for them. It's just the weirdest thing. Like, you look at these
Right.
pictures of these professors and their comb overs and their pot bellies, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
how did you end up in this world? But But again, they're grown-ups, they can all make the same decisions that you and I can
Right.
make. There's no excuses for their actions, but it's just like, in what world did you end up in that situation? And it's just that idea of just appeasing someone to be cool, and how you think that goes away when you graduate high school, but apparently it doesn't.
Yeah, it's the same high school politics
Mhm,
and socio like rivalries and things like
mhm,
that. Like in terms of the people that like being bought into it, like the nerdy professors and things like that. Like I guess it's a testament to just how much like money papers over so many things in this world that like people with terrible backgrounds can kind of gloss over that if they're investing into building new buildings at a university or something like
mhm.
that, or giving the right donation to the right place. And it's sad that how much money just kind of rules everything. And even now, with
Yeah.
like so many people not coming out with it, whether it's they're worried about losing their jobs because of their connections and the emails and things like that, or just the grifters that all along were just trying to make money and get in with people to
Mhm.
get some kind of opportunistic endeavor out of it. I guess it's sad that it's like the
Yeah.
Obama quote that like any boardroom you go into, or even meeting with like foreign officials and things like that, like everybody belongs in every room because everyone is kind of a moron. Like no one's really out of your league in terms of intelligence,
Yeah.
and especially like the rich people, because they get rich in one thing. Like you have a company that like sells bags, and you got super rich, and now you think because you're a billionaire selling bags or whatever, you
Yeah.
must be a genius at everything. And like no, you're actually an
Sure.
idiot at everything, but you have this
Mhm.
like dark triad set of
Yeah.
traits that makes you like this insane
Which
businessman that gets rich.
Yeah, which is interesting with Epstein, because he knew a little bit about everything, but he didn't know a lot about anything. And
Right.
so, and that's how he sort of I always think of that movie Catch Me If You Can, where the kid goes around and
Yeah. Right.
that was a lot of what Epstein was. When he lost his job at the Dalton School, he was picked up by Bear Stearns, but he was also offered a job at the New York Times by Punch Sulzberger. And it's like, for what reason? This guy is, qualified for nothing. But that's how he lived his life. You hear him. It's funny in the emails. You'll hear him talk to like Noam Chomsky, and hear him talk to Steve Bannon,
Right.
and it's like two different personalities. Like over here, he's just this like dumb surfer bro, and then when he talks to Noam Chomsky, he speaks like a language, like he's this wise philosopher, and he's
Yeah. Right.
solving the physics equations, and like you know, famous neurophysicists are coming to him with his opinion about things, and it's just
Right.
like, man, he read a lot, but like he has people so fooled. But back to like the money thing, like when I was talking to this guy who was from Harvard, he said the thing with the professors there, like they loved the thing that they taught. Like that was their passion. Before he came along, they were just so, focused on this really evolutionary mathematics, this very
Right.
niche area, which is his department that he was in. And you had this guy come along who offered to donate to their department, which never happens. They always had to go out and request
Right.
money, and write to people and do grants. And they said this was the first time somebody just came to them and offered them money. And it was like they just gave him everything, because they were just
Right.
like, wow. And so he built departments, he built like student housing. And this guy had like actually stayed in the apartments that Epstein had built on campus, because he was a foreign exchange student. He couldn't go home at Christmas.
Hmm.
Um, and so like he saw everything. He was just a kid, but like he saw everything. He goes, our department had the nicest coffee maker on campus because Epstein bought the coffee
Yeah.
maker. But it was just like he came in and he told these just super nerds that they were special, and that they, which is, on the one hand, it's very nice. People
Right.
people deserve to hear that, but like he told them that they were powerful and they could have whatever they wanted, and he started hanging out because they made him feel special, because he wanted to be part of a college department
Right.
because he never finished college. And they were just like, sure, you're a billionaire and you're exciting and you're famous, and that makes us feel good. But it made Epstein feel good to be able to hang out with them. And he had an office there until almost the day he died. He had a key card and an
Yeah.
office.
Right.
And he was a fellow on campus, and they never took that away from him, even when he was arrested. Like that didn't matter to them. And so in that process, because again, you see these guys hanging around with him, and you're just like, how is this possible? This guy's like, 80 pounds overweight, is balding, he's got
Yeah.
Coke, he got a sweater vest and Coke bottle glasses. And how did this guy end up on Epstein's island with a 15-year-old girl? Like, how is
Right.
that even possible? And it was just because Epstein was getting something, it was transactional, he's getting something from being able to hang around at Harvard.
Right.
And then he's like, why don't I show you guys what I have? And it just became this just weird, nerdy relationships that don't make sense.
Yeah. Alan Dershowitz is another one that just is like especially gross and odious. You know,
Yeah.
this old gross guy.
Uh-huh.
Clean, you know, allegedly he only got massages and he kept his pants on, which seems like
His underwear
a
on,
weird
yeah.
detail to throw out. He's like, you know, I'm innocent because my pants never came off. And it
Yeah.
seems like a little loophole language
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
He's disgusting. He just like
Yeah.
he's one of the people, and there's a select few people in this case where they're like, I'm not going to get in trouble. I didn't do that, but also I
Right.
have no problem with it. And he's one of
Yeah.
them. Like he's written several articles about that we should lower the age of consent
Yeah.
because like
Right.
15-year-olds are so much more mature than they used to be. He's really gross. He thinks, there's this idea of being like worldly. And if you travel a lot, then the age of consent at like the youngest country in the entire world should be the age of consent everywhere because it
Right.
works out for them. And I travel a lot. He's kind of like that. Like he just thinks that nobody should be able to complain if they're 14, 15 years old. You're fully aware of what you're getting yourself into, and if you're upset about it, then that's your own problem. And again, he's written like in the files, they have like this book that he wrote. They have two articles that he wrote, and it's all about changing the age of consent and that
Yeah. Weird pet issue.
child porn art and photography is like it's freedom of expression and we shouldn't stand in the way of it of like child pornography
Right.
and photographs. And he's just disgusting and he goes after people. I'm like he's very sue happy. He will sue everyone. And he's just such a cantankerous old shit and he doesn't feel bad about anything. There's no remorse. He just thinks
Yeah.
he's
No remorse is the important part. Yeah.
yeah,
Except that
he's
he's
just
not
thinks he's
invited to the
great.
Hamptons parties anymore. Yeah, I think he
Nobody
talked about
likes
regretting
him.
that, right?
Like the only time he can get interviewed is
Yeah.
from Chris Cuomo now because Chris Cuomo has been kicked off everything. Like he's just
Yeah.
not. He's very unlikable. Nobody wants to work with him. Epstein
Right.
hated him after a while because he was a liberal, and then he quit working for Epstein and went to work for Trump, and that pissed Epstein off. And then he decided now I'm a Republican because it benefits me more. Like
Yeah.
he's just somebody who's always like every one of these other guys. He's just like, how does this benefit me first? Okay, I'm gonna go do that. But he's just the most unlikable, horrible person. But he is getting interviewed in a few days, so that could be interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird stuff like that too, because Bill Barr recently published an op-ed about how Todd Blanche is the guy to right the ship at the DOJ, and he's doing everything right. And then like the connection with his dad that got Epstein his
Yeah, like
first
Bill Barr
teaching
shouldn't be
gig.
talking right now.
Yeah. And so
It's
it's like obviously
awful.
like personal protection, but also it's like it's surprising to me that they even published that. Like, does that sway anybody that Bill Barr is defending Todd Blanche in an
No,
op-ed somewhere?
I
Like,
mean,
what's the point of that?
if I was Todd Blanche is a terrible person, but if I was Todd Blanche or anybody in that administration, I'd be like, Bill Barr, don't talk about me. Like, don't go on camera and talk about me. Like,
Yeah.
Bill Barr is so enmeshed in the Epstein story. His father was the one who hired Epstein to work at the Dalton School, and then he resigned in protest from the school, and then he went off to write a book about sexually abusing children. Hypothetically, it
On a
was a
different planet, right?
on a different planet. It was fiction, guys. It was just fiction. That school is super locked down. I've talked with a student there, and they're just so protective of the school that they just won't talk. But I know more stuff happened. It's just gonna take time or it won't. But like
Yeah.
there's a lot of creepy stuff surrounding that whole thing. But then Bill Barr is there the entire time. He was a very 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 young man at the time. He was aware of Epstein at the time, and he sort of worked his way up into the Trump administration. And he was the AG when Epstein died, and like there's that whole controversy. Like he's just sort of always there and always
Hmm.
had power to do something. You know what I mean? What he did, we don't know. And then when he gets on camera, he talks. He just is very like oafish and like
Yeah.
unreachable and you never know whose side he's on because he's like against Trump sometimes and sometimes he's not against Trump. But he's too far in the middle of the story to ever get
Right.
a clear answer out of him about what he knew. Did he go to the jail? Did he visit? Did he,
Well, yeah.
like,
Then there's like
yeah,
inconsistencies with the moving the body right and checking him
yep.
in, and then like the camera being off for when he committed
Yeah,
suicide and hung himself.
nine
Yeah,
cameras were off. They only had 11, nine of them were turned off because they were updating their software. Like, it, and I mean, even if, let's say, it's all on the up and up and he killed himself and it is what it is, which, is an option. The amount of negligence on a floor of
right,
a jail where you had a high profile person who is friends with the president, who is part of a case for abusing over 1,000 girls, like, they would never have a cellmate. Like, there were just so many things that would never happen if it was somebody else. And that is something to pay attention to. Whether or not he killed himself, all that stuff allowed it to happen.
right,
Whether that was intentional or not intentional. Like, he shouldn't have been able to kill himself. He should have had enough surveillance. He should have had, again,
right.
all 11 cameras turned on. Like, we have this video of the jail cells, right? That people paid attention to and said, there's time missing here, here, here. And people think that it's pointing to his jail cell, but his jail cell is like down the stairs, across the floor, up the stairs, down a hall behind a closed door. Like,
Yeah,
we're not even
right,
looking anywhere near his jail cell. And so there's just very weird stuff. I know that the two guards on duty were indicted and then their case was dropped for not, for falsifying records, saying they were paying attention. But it's just odd. I was talking to somebody else who has been in that jail before for criminal purposes, and they said nobody who is as high profile as Epstein would have been in that unit, would have had a roommate, would have been going
right,
out for recreation, would have been, with his lawyers so much. I have a lot of concerns about that last phone call he made to his girlfriend, that were told over and over again doesn't exist. There's no transcript, blah, blah, blah. Because we have this whole file and we know the guard he spoke with, and he says, I don't have my prison ID pin, so I can't log into the phone. And the guard says, well, I'll log you in. And then he tells the other guy, give him 15 minutes or whatever. So the guard logged him into the phone. It was a jail phone, which means there has to be a record of that call. Like, if you're
right,
logged into the jail phone, they're not going to be like, oh, there was no recording. They
right.
would record anything coming in and out on those jail phones. There was not a cell phone. And so we don't know what he talked about in that last phone call that was like 5 hours before he died. We don't know his state of mind. We don't know if he was, it would be helpful to hear if he was like giving everything away to his girlfriend and being like, go look for this. Here's where I buried this, or here's my
Right.
money, or this is what you're going to get. That would make more sense. And we could say, okay, well, he's, tying up loose ends. He probably killed himself, but nobody knows where that call
Yeah. It's a testament to Trump's like staffing choices where he
is.
puts like giant clowns into roles that like maybe don't matter to him personally. But the thing that personally affects him, he puts in like a total shark, like Bill Barr or
Yep.
Todd Blanche in this case as the deputy and now I guess acting attorney general. But it's a big difference when it's like that lizard brain self-protection instinct of Donald Trump where the Department of Defense we can put on a Fox News weekend host. Not a
Yeah.
big deal for the Department of Defense, but we need a real serious guy at this Attorney General role or deputy spot to protect me and keep me out of jail.
Yeah. Or just somebody who knows my background and knows what can't
Yeah,
come out
right.
publicly. That's probably a big part of it too.
Yeah, and his dad is maybe involved in a lot of that too. But
Yeah.
what did you make of Ivanka and Jared's Albanian island? Because to me, that seems
Uh,
like the most tone deaf thing ever. It's like you're already being accused of
uh,
interacting with this private island for sex
yeah.
trafficking, and now they're stealing this private land,
Yeah.
protected land, I
And saying
guess.
like,
To
guys, we discovered an island. I just wanted to be like, we
yeah,
have Google Earth. There's no more discoveries. We've got all of it.
right,
Like, and just like, yeah, completely tone deaf, going on and being like, we discovered this. There's military barracks on it, but we found it first. Like,
right,
they
and the
probably
underground
just,
bunkers. Like,
yeah,
to my untrained eye,
yeah.
that seems like a big red flag for sex trafficking, that there's a large underground network of tunnels from the Cold War.
Right. Like, all these people probably should be buying islands right now. Like, just, wait a couple of years until we hash this
Yeah,
out and then
right,
then talk about islands. But also, in the middle. in the middle of the Trump administration, like, let's say that this investigation doesn't exist, everything that has gone wrong with the policies in this administration and how they've taken, the big beautiful bill, taking away all the environmental,
Yeah.
coverage, all the Medicaid, veterans benefits, like it's everybody has become poor. Like this was the goal of the Trump administrations. Everything's gold at their house. Everybody else is
Right.
poor. It's very like, Les Mis. It's very Tale of Two Cities. Like he's having a great time. He's just like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take from you guys and I'm gonna be,
Right.
Prince John over here. Um
Speaking of Les
I,
Mis, do you think it's about time to set up barricades in DC or
I
something?
know.
Start chanting about red and
That's the
black.
house. Um
Yeah.
no, so but like just for anybody at this point in the game, like even the Met Gala, like to get on TV and have a big giant public display of wealth, um, when everybody's starving,
Right.
it, I was okay. Somebody, this is random, but somebody posted a menu from the World Trade Center from that like top restaurant in New York was in the World Trade Center, and they just showed the menu from 2000. And it was just like, man, those are McDonald's prices now. Like those are not.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's 25 years ago. That is what we pay for fast food now. Um, and that was the finest dining, right? Like it's just
Right.
like we live in a time, and I wrote a paper about this, but like the price of college, if you consider inflation over time, from when I graduated to now has gone up 495%, right?
Right.
That is the price of if I went back to the University of Washington where I graduated, I would pay almost 500% more with inflation, meaning like dollar for dollar from then to now,
Right.
500% more. The price of houses has gone up 400% with inflation. Like everything is so far out of reach for the average person that to get on TV and talk about your new island that you bought and how many hectares it is. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I gotta Google that. I don't even
Yeah.
know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, I know
And the way she
acres.
talked about it, like exploring it barefoot as if it's this like heavenly state of nature, pure
I know,
paradise
and
that they
like
just happen to
like
stumble
everybody's
upon.
just like dying
Yeah.
to have like a little L-shaped yard, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the height of like who
Yeah.
made it. It
And
just
the best part is it was on the yacht of the Rothschild guy who the
yeah,
Rothschild
right? No
family's
big
involved with
deal. Buy
Epstein.
an island with a Rothschild. There's
Yeah.
nothing weird about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it is so tone deaf. Like everything coming from them is so tone deaf. It was what was the day when they were having the big party at Mar-a-Lago? They had the Great Gatsby party at Mar-a-Lago, and it was
Yeah.
just like, you guys are just
Like the bikini
like
ladies and the giant champagne glasses as
like
part of the
like
decor.
first off, so tacky, but just
Yeah.
like so tone deaf. While like Los Angeles is burning and like people are starving, people can't get
Right.
to the polls. The mail-in ballot boxes are being ripped out of the ground. Like it's just like they're just their job is to be wealthy, right? That's their job. Their full-time job is to make
Right.
money. It's just, I mean, beyond being like colonialism amundo, pulling land in
Yeah. Yeah.
Albania
Right.
and buying it when it wasn't for sale. Um, it's just incredibly tone deaf to the entire world that is like just trying to like buy groceries, like a week's worth of groceries.
Yeah. Well, it's Trump's MO too of making money, of abusing power. Like his first term, he was all about selling out all of his properties to any foreign,
Yeah.
lobbyist or special interest group. But it's funny too because you always wonder: does Trump turn the people around him gaudy, tacky, and evil, or does he just attract already gaudy, tacky, evil people? But like the Mar-a-Lago face that's kind of
Oh
developed
yeah.
is like such a weird thing where they're like literally changing their faces and body, and
Yeah.
especially when like people are trying to look like Ivanka to get like
I
special
don't know. I don't
attention from Donald
know.
Trump.
I mean, it's so far away from anything I know and any level. Like I
Yeah,
grew
you
up
can't
in
get
like
into their head.
I was like, I grew up in a mill town. Like people worked at the mill. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know if they look in the mirror and they say this is attractive. I guess anything can be clubby if everybody around you is doing it.
yeah,
Even if it looks super weird to the outside world. It's kind of like religions where people get into like a religious cult. If everybody they know is also in the religious cult, it
right.
doesn't seem that bad. Um, I often wonder, like, in that world, why hasn't Donald Trump done a little work, like
Yeah,
on
right.
himself, why hasn't he taken care of himself when he's surrounded by that all day? But not that that looks good either, but that just kind of, I don't know. It is very weird. And you wonder, yeah, I don't know. I have no answer for that. It's just so
Yeah,
far away from my conscious stream of knowledge that I don't know.
right. Well, and I talk about this a lot that no one benefits from political correctness more than Republicans, and especially Donald Trump, because people don't just point at his face and say, "Why are you so orange today? Like, why did you not blend it?" Everyone is so polite and
Yeah.
nice, and like his fake hair, his fake white teeth, like everything is so fake about him. But that is
Right.
the person that they're riding the coattails of for
But also,
easy money and access to power.
like, why though? You know what I mean? When you look at Marco Rubio and the shoes, right? The
Yeah,
giant shoes, like, why? Is there like a blackmail reason? Like, there just doesn't seem to be anything to benefit at this point, right? At this point in the
right.
game, you wonder what the benefit is because I mean, even if he screws over the election and tries to like not leave or whatever, like biologically he's on a clock, right? There's only a certain
Yeah,
period of time to where you would start to think that people need to kind of like move out of mom and dad's house and start to take care of their own political careers,
yeah,
right?
right,
But the things that people are willing to do and say for him when he does something so stupid like the reflecting pool and the fiasco and the paint ripping up,
right.
and then he goes, he creates that somebody's tearing it up and it's just so obvious what's going on, right? Like it's very obvious, it's in front of our eyes. We've seen the process of it peeling away and the hydrogen
Yeah,
peroxide and all this stuff. And then he'll go, no, Antifa is cutting it with a knife. And all the people around him, who I assume some of them are very smart, go, oh yeah, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And it's
right,
just like, and it's such, yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but like the emperor has no clothes. Like it's like
right.
the people around him are such sycophants and you wonder, is it like a cult mentality where you just can't think for yourself? Is there a benefit? Is there a blackmail? Like what would make you, as a person who grew up in politics and went to Harvard or whatever you did to get to this point, what would make you throw all that away for somebody who's just like a hot mess dumpster
Yeah,
fire,
right.
you burning rolling down a mountain? Like why? I don't think it benefits anybody. I just think they don't know what they're doing anymore. Like it's just like everybody's just kind of wandering around a little bit lost
Right.
and trying to look to the person next to them and they're a little bit lost and so they're just sort of like, wandering around the room.
Yeah, and the loss aspect's kind of interesting too because that is kind of Donald Trump's like benefit is that he is so lost himself. Uh you got to thought we are going to
No,
have a
I just
special
have
guest
little
appearance.
screechy kids. Yeah.
Okay. But like Donald Trump, he has no real ideological leanings. He's not religious.
No.
That's all obviously a lie. I wonder too, like how many people need to learn firsthand that Donald Trump screws over everybody. His word means nothing. And it's
Right.
like the Rick Wilson, everything Trump touches dies. Like Israel right now is kind of like pissed off at
Absolutely.
Trump because he just totally sold out all of
Right.
their military goals in his dumb Iran deal. And so it's like not only are they so they're like such hangers on, but the fact
Mhm.
that like they have to just totally change on a whim all of their
Yeah.
alleged beliefs. Like free trade, for 50 years dominated Republican policy on everything, just out the window because Donald Trump doesn't understand mercantilism is a failed like economic
Mhm.
process that has never worked. And there's a reason every modern country no longer is just
Yeah.
trying to set up colonies and screw over everybody. Like I'm so amazed that people like literally tens of thousands of people have like gone bankrupt or lost money or been screwed out of deals by like
Farmers.
any relationship with Donald
Yep.
Trump.
Okay, going back to the Supreme Court today. Farmers, have lost everything under the Trump
Yeah.
administration. Like I come from a family of farmers. Half of them are liberal, half of them are conservative. The price of wheat, like a bushel of wheat is sort of how you
Yeah.
measure how you're doing. The price of the land, if you wanted to sell it, the price that it costs to harvest, the price of utilities and water is so much higher than what they earn from the thing that they sell. But then today in the Supreme Court, they sided with Monsanto. And,
Yeah. Right.
our family and most families have gotten cancer because they used Roundup on their farms.
Right.
And, that, and at the time that my dad got it, thankfully survived it, but 50% of people had a 5-year survival rate from that specific cancer that was caused by
Right.
that specific product. There have been many lawsuits based on uh, uh, glyphosate and Roundup based because it gives you a specific cancer, which is non-Hodgkin's
Right.
lymphoma. That all targets the farming industry, that targets the food. We're supposed to be talking like with RFK about making America healthy again. They don't care about pesticides
Yeah.
in your food. They don't care about people dying of cancer trying to make the bread that you eat on your table with your kids. Like that is a specific thing where they're taking their own voting base in these rural farmland states that vote red, and they are killing their own constituents. Like they're hurting their own constituents. Then those people are all on Medicaid because they can't afford private health care. They are working for themselves. Their Medicaid has been taken away. In the case of my parents, and I could be getting this wrong, but I think this is what my dad said, is they're now on Medicare, Medicaid, um, and they do like the pay ahead system, but they have a certain period of time before that runs out and then they don't have the next option, right?
Right.
Because that has been taken away. You think of veterans and you talk about like how brave they are and they're fighting wars for us and we're creating wars for them. And
Yeah.
then they
Right.
come home and veterans are just abandoned. They're abandoned for their mental health, they're abandoned for their physical health, and their insurance is a joke. And so like these are the constituents for the Trump administration. It's people who live in a very lower middle class, maybe less educated, live in farm states, military. These are the people who are being hurt the most. Like
Right.
people who, if you think of like a wealthy Democrat who, lives in Connecticut, they're not even being hurt that badly by the Trump administration. They're just voting
Right.
for social reasons, right? Like social economic reasons and thinking about other people before themselves. But the people who are voting for him are the people who are being crushed. They are the people who were
Right.
told not to wear masks during COVID. So they had a higher rate of death during
Yeah.
COVID,
Right.
right? Like he's killing his own voters, which you would think would be absolutely stupid just on a numbers game. But like these are the people and it's this issue of almost like a Stockholm syndrome, or when
Yeah.
you think of like an abused spouse, how they continue to say, no, you don't understand, he loves me. Like you just don't understand him. He actually loves us, you just can't see it. Trump is the abusive spouse for
Yeah. Right.
his base. I mean, he hits them and they turn around and they say, do it again. Um, and I don't understand. It's gonna be I feel like this is going to be curriculum for future psych programs, like
Yeah. Right.
how easily people can be manipulated into doing something that harms themselves, harms their families,
Right.
takes everything away financially, and that cult mentality, because it is a cult mentality. Like I'm going to give all my money to you. I'm going to tell you that you can take it from me, and that's fine. And I'm going to do what you say, even though 10 years ago, I could look at this and objectively see that this is harmful, this is racist, this is,
Right.
we're not letting any, the no fly ban for the Muslims. Like here's an example. When Trump got into office the first time, one of the first executive orders was the no fly rule for Muslims, for
Right.
Muslim countries, right? What does he do this week? He has this group of people come into the Oval Office to talk about religious freedom in America and how they're the Religious Freedom Coalition. And in his head, of course, he's not thinking of Muslims when he's thinking of
Yeah.
religious
Right.
freedom. He's thinking of Christian nationalism. But like that people who vote for him and go, huh, when he did the Muslim ban, that felt pretty terrible, but I can look at what he's doing now and see that he's for, freedom in America and religious. Like they can't see that those two things cannot coincide, right? That this is a president who doesn't want religious freedom. He wants religious freedom from that one specific
Yeah.
sect
Right.
of religion. And so it's just like, but you can't explain that to people. I mean, I have people here who I've talked to, we live again in a very immigrant heavy community. And when, people are getting ripped out of their businesses and their cars by ICE agents, things will go around on local Facebook pages. And it's like, just FYI, make sure your kids carry their passports because everybody is from somewhere else.
Yeah. Right.
And parents are freaked out because their kids walk to school and like everybody's just really scared. And so I was working at my son's school at that time. And so we made an announcement in our classroom, just FYI, this had gone out. And one of the women I worked with said, what are you talking about? Ripped out of their cars? That doesn't happen. And I said, Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like ICE
Right.
officer, they literally slammed the guy to the ground at the restaurant. And she goes, "What are you talking about? They only go after criminals, like rapists. Like that's the only people they're looking for." And I just remember thinking, like, she really believes that because wherever she's getting her information has filtered it to look like that's what's happening. And they're really good guys, right? They're
Right.
doing, and it's just really amazing, and maybe that's been the takeaway from this, as because this, a good thing that's happened in the Trump administration is we have shifted heavily away from legacy media, which kind of feeds you what you're supposed to believe or
Right.
what you're supposed to think. And everything, in publishing, newspapers, TV, everything has gone very independent. And our swath of news has much more variety. You probably still get it from like a lean or a slant.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but that people really get their information through a filter, and that filter can completely define the way the world works and how you vote. It's just very interesting to me because, I have family members who are vote MAGA. Some are stalwart soldiers and know everything that's going on and still vote for it.
Hmm.
And then some are just kind of like the very typical older American who just doesn't really know what's going on, but like votes
Right.
the way her friends votes, right? And just how easily we can just be manipulated as a society. Like older people are so easily manipulated. But I will say in the protests that I've gone to, it's a lot of older women though, so I don't want to like
Yeah. Right.
write people off. But yeah, just like just that idea of how easily people can be moved to do something or other without actually being thinking
Yeah.
about it.
And that's like one of the things that Trump's actually successful at. Like a lot of the Project 2025 stuff seems like it's just hitting the wall of like apathy and how many like checkpoints and veto points there are in our government system. But like changing like the FCC and obviously, having conservative allies that are sucking up to protect their bottom lines. They're like buying up these media properties and then destroying them. Like CBS is obviously the perfect example. And I believe that Barry Weiss is going to take her warpath of destroying valuable,
Yeah.
iconic media companies to CNN
Yeah.
next. But
I'm sure.
like,
I'm sure. That's a long
yeah,
time coming. Yeah.
yeah. What's your media diet? Like, where do you doom scroll out? What is? Do you have any like companies or
Mm.
peoples who flag or highlight?
I sometimes have to be very intentional about it because, um, being on Substack now, I get a lot of, I listen to a lot of live streams and people that I look up
Hmm.
to and trust. But sometimes the things that you see are just an opinion about something, but I need to find somebody to tell me like what the story actually is
Right.
before I hear the opinion on it. And so, I will go a few places. There isn't real unbiased news. It's hard to find. I do like Rachel Maddow, but I think she's probably very much under the thumb of MSNBC and what she can say and do. I'll go read like the Wall Street Journal and things like that. But it's just like all these people,
Yeah. You really have
I
to triangulate everything. You have to get
yeah,
like both sides angles on the opinion side and then try to
yes,
find
and
the
you have to
news.
read between the lines because like I've had a small business transcription company for a long time, and so I subcontracted for the New York Times for like 10 years. And so I know for a fact that the people who write for the New York Times do their homework, write from a point of accuracy and fact, but it goes to the filter of the admin
Right.
at the top who are at the behest of the Trump administration. And then that's where things get moved around and changed and cut out. And it sucks because you have really, really good writers and journalists who aren't paid enough and work really hard
Right.
to do the right thing, and they write with integrity and honesty, and their whole life is fact checking because they don't want to get it wrong. But then you have these people who just say no at the top because, even I was speaking to somebody the other day who was a book agent, and they said, it's just a tough time because there's just only so many things you can write about right now because if it bumps up against the Trump administration, they
Right.
won't publish it. No publisher will touch it because they will get shut down. And which is just, I mean, it's just so historical. Like it just feels
Yeah.
like we're living in another time. But so I bounce around. to get just the basics of what a story is. Like, so if it's like
Yeah,
the
right.
reflecting tool or whatever, like I will see what is the story, and then I'll start to hear people's opinions that I trust. And I I would say that it's a little bit helpful that some of the like really hyper disgusting conservative like media has left MAGA, because like they're still not somebody I would hang out with at dinner, but like they're a little bit more objective, even though they're like hyper conservative, to where I can listen to 5 minutes of them and disagree with them, but I can also see what that opinion is
Yeah.
on that
And they're
side.
not totally bad faith.
Yeah, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is still way out there for me. I don't think I'm ever gonna. I appreciate that she's helping survivors, but she has done horrible things, and I can't do it. Um, but I just think that it's important to get a variety in your news, because it's so easy to get in a vacuum about what you
Yeah.
believe and what you think. And even in that idea of that filter and not knowing that things are going on in the world, that can happen on the left as well. It's so important to hear what everybody's saying, and you can disagree with them. I think it's important to listen to people you disagree with, but at least you know what's being said. So when you're talking to someone, it's not like a super shock if they come up to you and they go, I believe this. And you go, I've never heard of that before. Right. Like,
Yeah,
it's
right.
important to know, you know, people who think that the 250, fairgrounds or whatever happened this week, there are people who think that that was filled with people, right? And to like
Yeah.
look at that and be like, oh, they think that, okay, but I can see
I love
also
Donald
pictures.
Trump's his post about that. He throws in like little phrases like the totally packed fair. It's like, okay, everyone saw the videos and
Right.
photos
Like,
of
and
like
it's just such a
the reflection of
bummer.
the
Yeah, it's
yeah.
such. I just got that was a moment. Like, if you were gonna fake the news, that would be the moment to like not have that in the background in your
Yeah,
newscast,
right.
because they're just like 1,000 people behind us, and you're like, we can see it. I don't
Yeah.
see. I don't see anybody.
And that's something that like I'm thankful for, that like the biggest push to fascism in at least like modern American history has been at a time when we were not so monolithic as a media or a kind of cultural complex. And now, like cable news is dying. So I don't even know why conservatives want CBS necessarily. It's like losing
Yeah.
viewers probably as they're dying off. And like no one
Yeah.
like my age or younger is watching any
No.
terrestrial or even satellite cable news, anything.
Well, it's
Everything is
you
clip
would why
based
would you
and
pay for it? I mean, that's the thing.
yeah,
Like, when they
right.
brought in streaming, they're like, although Hulu kind of screwed people, they're like, it's only $20 a month for all these channels, and then they went up like $30 a year.
Yeah, right.
But but I mean, it's like you can watch streaming and watch all these news, and get all your news or get all your stuff in one place, or you can pay like $200 a month to have a dish on your house. Like, people don't do that anymore because
Right.
it costs too much, but also, like, it's like my kids going to a hotel room and going like, "Why are what I have to watch this I can't pick my show?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, "No, this is actual
Yeah.
cable television." And they're like, "This is
And
stupid."
that's a I have Sirius satellite radio in my car, and it's like I
Mhm.
laugh every time because I'm like, "Oh, I'll check in with the news," and I make a
Mhm.
bet with myself. I'm like, "I bet both of them, like MSNBC and CNN, are on commercial right now. Go to
Yeah,
them, commercial on CNN." It's like, it's like I watch so many interviews on CNN where it's like they get the person. It's like they get three questions before the next commercial break, and like the
right,
person like starts saying he disagrees with Trump on something. And it's like right there, follow that lead. Up, it's time for a commercial break. We'll be right
right,
back. Thanks for joining us, person who just made
right.
news and had
And
an inch of separation between the party line.
and especially when there's, like, something on the ground, like, I talk about Delaney Hall, when you talk about the stuff that was happening in Minnesota. Like, I'm not gonna turn on CNN and be like, "What's happening in Minnesota?" I'm gonna go on YouTube and look for somebody who has a live stream on the ground that's
Right,
just filming it, right? So you can just see what's happening. Or sometimes you'll have somebody who's just sort of like walking around narrating what they see. You get more information from that than you will from someone who's being very careful about what they're filming, who they're talking
right,
to, what they're saying, what they're. I would rather I would rather see on the ground reporting, which we used to have more of. We used to have more people who were in the middle of different actions, and talking to people who were upset in the moment and not
right, right.
making sure what they were about to say is okay before they say it.
Yeah,
I prefer that. And then, and this can't happen all the time, but like if there's something close to where I live, and if it's not incredibly unsafe, like going and seeing it for myself, right?
right,
Just go there. I live in a place where that's probably more accessible than a lot of people, but like hop in the car and just go see for yourself and make sure that what you're seeing on the news isn't, more performative for me, or, whatever they
right.
want us to believe.
And you've got kind of like a media career going. In terms of like Marshall McLuhan, how much do you think Substack, like the message is, or the medium is the message? Where, like, how much do you think Substack allowing you to like you got kind of big pretty fast, right? Like Substack
I
has been like a like I
I
guess I don't know, you're 10,000 hours behind you leading up to this, but
I think that I mean, I get a little bit sus about it because like I I have my own Substack, but then I'm a contributing editor for Blue App and they have like a huge audience
right,
and everybody sees something different when they log into my profile. So some people say, "Wow, you have 500,000 followers." And then some people see my actual follower count. And so I'm always just like, "Those aren't mine. It just links it.
uh
That's what Substack does." But then yeah, there's a little bit of unfairness with that too because when it links it all, it then puts you in an algorithm thinking you have 500,000 followers. So
mhm,
then it builds you exponentially based on kind of this false number. So
right,
I try really hard to like platform other people because I'm like, well, if my things are getting seen a lot and I can share this person's, article that they wrote, then they'll get seen a lot. And I try to kind of pay it forward because I feel like people help to bring me where I am. And so if I could do that for somebody else, that's what I'd like to do. But I I try to stay positive about Substack because Substack, again, like we said with all these people, has the opportunity to do something really, really great. Like they grew really fast and they became the platform of independent journalism. I was invited to like a meet and greet in New York for their it was just like they just brought in a bunch of Substackers. I don't know why I was invited, but it was just like little pretentious food in an
hey,
office building.
you got invited, you belong in that room.
But it was so we got to ask questions and it felt a little performative from some of the people who were there. They're just like, "Have you seen my Substack?" And
Yeah, right,
I was like,
yeah.
nobody knows who I am. So anyway, but we got to ask questions and one of the biggest questions, and I don't remember if I asked it or if somebody else asked it, was this like, if somebody comes along to someone like a Hamish McKenzie, who's like the CEO, and offers them $5 billion for Substack, how are you going to say no to that and
Yeah,
maintain the integrity of a platform of free expression, which it's changed even now. It's changed over time. Like you see, what's his name? Tate, the rapist. What's his first name? I forgot it. I'm glad. Anyway, there's people on Substack who are terrible people who also have Substacks for like free speech reasons. And
yeah,
he's kind of
right.
just like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." um,
Bronze Age pervert, I think, it's a
yeah,
pretty
just like,
successful
yeah.
Substack now.
And it's been a nice filter because it's still the majority of people here are still very well read and like to read long form articles
Yeah,
and that kind of weeds out, I guess, of some of the trolls that could be hanging out.
yeah, right,
Um, but it's like if somebody came along like an Elon Musk and wanted to buy Substack, how do you say no to that? Like and tell us that this
right.
platform will maintain the integrity that it has. What
And
can
fight the
you
natural acidification where, I can make
yeah,
a
how
little
can
more money making the user experience X
yeah,
amount
and
worse.
then change how it works and
Right,
because even right now they're bringing these things called creator I don't know, way to fill something out. But it's the idea that sponsors can look at your page and offer to sponsor your page. So it
right,
could be like, Dove soap wants to sponsor my page. And I feel weird. I mean, I filled it out, but I feel weird about it because I don't want to be like an ad platform in order to say the things that I'm trying to say. Like, I'd like to just be able to do it without, say,
plug-in
oh,
ZipRecruiter.
yeah. I always think of these like famous people who always end up with like a perfume ad and just how ridiculous they
Yeah,
look. And
right,
like, it's just like, I don't want that. I don't mind if every once in a while there's just a little like button in the corner. I don't know. I guess it would have to depend on it. But I also, they said, are there brands you absolutely wouldn't work with? And I thought there must be like, but I just can't think of them right now. And so I would be very picky if somebody came along and was like, I would like to advertise all over your Substack. Because I think that's just a little bit of a slippery slope, I would say,
yeah, right,
to really capitalizing Substack instead of it being this really independent journalistic place. And so I don't know. I don't know if I can trust that Substack wouldn't flip if like necessary because I think it's
right,
very hard for people to say no to money. But I hope at least it lasts a very long time. I hope by that time there are other options and we've sort of spread out
right.
and diversified.
Well,
But
there'll
it's
always be that market incentive for somebody else to just redo what Substack was doing well. I feel
yeah,
like like already right now when Elon Musk destroyed Twitter and ran into the ground
like blue sky
immediately,
showed
like
up.
yeah, Blue Sky,
Yeah,
Threads,
yeah,
Substack. I mean, that helped me a lot just because
yeah,
now I have like 5 places to copy and paste all my
yeah,
jokes. I just go
yeah.
viral in different places. So in a way, it kind of works. Or I guess I was like, it was relatively good timing for me personally to just
Hmm.
expand the number of platforms that I'm on. But you get to the point where also the platforms are going to start having like a total ideological swing. Already like Twitter, I'm sure Elon Musk is like
Oh,
daily
it's
going
terrible.
through and manipulating the algorithm for himself, obviously, but to like
I get
downgrade other
my
people he
whole
doesn't
thread
like.
is like White House posts, and I'm like, how am I'm not contributing to this? How is this the only? I have like
Yeah.
followers that I really want to see like the things that they're doing, and I can't see them.
Yeah. Now you also have like a stalker situation going on. Do you get a lot of heat, a lot of hate? Do you get emails? Do you respond to them? Do you ignore them? What's going
I
on?
don't. I've had it pretty low key thus far. I mean, you get trolls, and you just
Yeah.
kind of just like whatever. I've had lately. I think it's just I don't know what the intent behind it is or like what the goal is for it. It's just somebody who's really made it their full-time job to just write about me, go after me, kind of terrorize me. Obviously, they're blocked everywhere, but whether it is that they've just logged out and can still see my Substack page or whatever, they still can see everything that I do. There's really
Hmm.
just no way around that. They have other people send things to me, so there'll be somebody who pops up because I'm usually like, if somebody's like in my DMs going, "Oh, I wrote this thing or I did this thing, can I send it to you?" I'm usually like, "Yeah, no, go ahead." Now I have to be more careful because he's sending things to me through other people. And so like
Right.
he's got me like this manifesto that was 29 pages long. And,
Did you look
and
into that at all? Did you read it? Do you just
I
ignore it
looked at it a
completely?
little bit, but I was just like, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not really where I want to spend my evening. Um, but it just became this like really obsessive, slightly dangerous, um, focus, this hyper focus on me and my life and anything I wrote about, and then I had to start thinking about like, did I say anything about my kids? Because then he'll write about my kids and like, um, and thankfully his audience is very small. And that's not like a dig on him. That's just very helpful that it kind of
Yeah.
is a little bit of a vacuum. Um, but I think the biggest thing that has helped me because I've done all the reporting for like the police officers and the FBI and the cyber crimes and all that. I've done all the things that I'm supposed to do. But I think biggest thing that's been really helpful is just people have validated that how I feel about it or my worries about it is totally normal and that I'm not
Right.
overreacting or I'm not um, because I know a lot of people on here that have been through so much worse and have been doing this for years, and they probably wouldn't bat an eye at this, but I haven't. And this just felt very close to home. He was starting to talk about my location, and
Hmm.
it just was not comfortable. And so, the idea of ignoring somebody and hoping they go away did not work.
Yeah.
Everybody
Right.
was like, just ignore him, and I was like, we're going on 4
Tried.
weeks. 4 weeks
Yeah.
of ignoring, and this is I mean, just night and day posting about me. And so, I mean, I don't know how it'll roll out long term. I hope it will stop. But I guess the validation of how I felt about it was helpful. I've filed all the reports that I can file, so there's a paper trail if I need that. And just that, again, and this sounds I don't know if this sounds stupid or just like I don't know. I said that like that living in this time that's a little bit of like, we think of like the Epstein files and women being believed and coming forward and saying, I feel this way, and like somebody actually hearing how they felt. Like I was worried, this man is posting all these things about me that have never happened, like things that just don't exist. And I
Right.
just remember thinking like, how do I have enough credibility with the people that I talk to that they would know this is not true if I say it's not true? Like, will I be believed if somebody asks me? Um, and, which I felt like was just such a metaphor, I guess, for the times that we're living in. But they did. Like the people came for they're like, they read it and they go, Ellie, of course I don't. I obviously that's not true. And I said, okay, thank
Right.
you.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But it's been a big learning experience. I've spoken with other people who are also being threatened who have been doing this years and years and just the idea that independent journalism is definitely not protected against that. We've been safe from it because Trump really hates legacy media, but that won't be forever. He's going to figure
Right.
out, he first and foremost, he will figure out that Jim Acosta is out here talking about him because he hated Jim Acosta when he was in the press pool. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
he'll hate him out here.
Right.
So he's going to figure out we're doing this, but how do we protect ourselves when we don't have all these things set in place that you might have if you worked for the New York Times and legal
Yeah,
news or
right.
whatever? Like,
Exactly.
how do we do that here? What should we do? Somebody mentioned the idea of like an independent journalist union or something, putting protections
Right.
into place, legal protections or whatever. So it's something to think about. I'm at a point where I'm not afraid anymore. Like there was a lot of worry and anxiety about what this guy was going to do, or and I sometimes that comes back a little bit, like he'll post something and it comes back a little bit, but now more I'm just like, just I guess exasperated,
Right,
and
right.
I was saying the other night, like a little revengey, but I'm not going to respond to him.
Yeah,
I'd really like to
right.
humiliate him, but I'm not going to. And I've never publicly stated his name because I just don't want more attention on him.
Yeah,
But
right.
it's a thing. I mean, he's done it before to other people, and it's just a thing that's not unusual, especially for women. I mean, women get targeted with stuff all the time, so it's
Yeah,
just
right.
like, how do you protect yourself? What do you do? How do you not only physically protect yourself, but how do you, when you turn everything off at night, how do you feel good about yourself despite somebody working very hard to make you feel otherwise?
Yeah. Well, anybody ever doing anything productive and important, always got haters at some point. That's
Yeah.
how you know you're doing something right, essentially, especially in this instance with
Yeah.
Trump. Yeah. Well, I wish you well. I'll let you go because we've been talking for quite a while. It was great to talk to you, and
Yeah, we
I'm a
should
big
do this
fan of
again.
everything that you do. Yeah.
Oh,
Anybody
thank you.
watching from my followers, follow Ellie here.
And
She's
vice
doing
versa.
very valuable stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, good to talk to you.
All right. It's good to talk to you too.
Yeah.
See you guys later.
Have a good rest of your week. See you,
You too.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Brain Milk. See